and then bringing in a bit of ultramarine blue. So vermilion ultramarine blue, just start shifting it over to a violet there. I can see what it is, just put a bit of white with it. I can see I've got this already, got a colour very close to the wall colour. And it looks much darker, obviously you're surrounded by the white. I've got a little image here I've already prepared. What I did, I just put some burnt sienna, a bit of red, and put an acrylic paint over a white ground, and then I've just transferred a drawing on top, similar to this, onto this. So I'm ready to show how the colours work with each other. It's very hard when you're doing a painting and you mix the colours first. It's hard to know if they're right. You need to do a little test to see if they work together within the painting. And you'll find this when you're doing even though you're doing a lot of mixing on a palette, before you start, you'll find that most of the colours you mix won't be quite right. You'll be very skillful if you can get the colours spot on, because the colours just change as soon as you put them on the painting. You perhaps, anyone learning to paint discovers this. You start mixing the colour on your palette, it's got surrounded by different colours. You might make it too light or slightly too warm. Put it on a painting and it will change. It will appear different, totally different colour. But still, you still need to have a big range of colours on your palette. So what we do, we use our intuition. We have a lot of colours on the palette. We see a colour's not quite right, and then we go, right, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But before, it's using all your knowledge of how to mix colours, get them on the palette, then you adjust them, okay? It makes a difference when you put the tape off. Just put it back out. And it's a little study. Not quite finished it, but I think I did enough just to show you how the colours work together within that.
Here we are going to look at the work of Marc Quinn, one of the artists that was on the suggestion list for you to look at and research. You need to Google him. It's a little bit more controversial than Edward Hopper that we gave you to look at as well, because he's a contemporary artist working now, and he does really sort of things that sort of, I don't know, push your boundaries a bit. For instance, this one here, I think, I'm not sure, I've still got to research it properly, but I think it's made of blood, frozen blood. I'm not entirely sure. I will research it a bit more, or perhaps you could find out for yourselves. But some of his work is really sort of not traditional. These flowers here aren't painted in a traditional way. I think they're photographed in a high density sort of colour filters on it, but they're very, very large, I believe. Again, I don't know much about this artist. I will keep researching him, and some of his things, I think this is a sort of self-portrait, as that is, I believe, but so I will check it out. Here's some of his latest work, which is what drew us to him, because he was working on the idea of a virus, a coronavirus, taking us over and sort of causing havoc. This is quite an emotional piece. A baby with a ventilator on, and there's all this sort of confetti and colour and scraped paint and the words in the background. So I just want to play around with this idea, I think, and show you how I would approach this, just to give you a starting point. Remember, you don't have to do Marc Quinn. You could choose a different artist, someone that you found yourself, but somebody who is you can relate to the idea of lockdown, the idea of a virus or a pandemic, the idea of something sort of taking you over a little bit. So I've got my sort of starting point. I'll show you here. I just was watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer last night and found this picture of is her name Sarah Michelle Gellar. So I thought, oh right, she's really pretty. I'll stick a mask on her, and just chose it really because it's a good photograph. But I thought it had the colours, the things that I wanted. I would sort of impose the virus over the top of. In the background, don't know if you can see, I've just found some headlines. I was trying to find a headline that had the lockdown written on it, so here we go. I've got the Queen making her speech. I've got one of the ministers, I can't remember, that's a financial guy I think. He's got the lockdown behind him, so I thought that was quite good. But I don't need his picture, don't even need the Queen actually, bless her. So I'm going to stick that back there, I think. Need to glue it down properly, but that will go back there. Now I've got my face in the front, but I wanted to make it a little bit more like the picture with the baby. I liked the idea of the mask. I thought that was something to play around with, because we were wearing so many masks, all the National Health Service people and first responders and people in shops all having to wear masks. So I wanted to play around with the idea of a mask. So I'm going to find this gas mask, and I thought I would stick that on before I start to add any paint. So it's going to take me a few minutes to do that. It's all collaged together. I just need to glue it down. So I'll be back with you in a little while.
It sounds like something from a horror film, a human head made entirely of blood. But instead, this work by artist Marc Quinn is hailed as one of the most important pieces to come out of the UK in the last 30 years. This blood head, as it's known, is the fourth in the series. Since 1991, Marc's made a new one every 5 years to document the signs of ageing.
So I make a mould of my head, then every 6 weeks go to the doctor and give some blood, and when I've got all 10 pints together, I defrost them all and pour them into the mould and refreeze it. So it's more like a kind of ice cube, really.
This head was made in 2006 and recently bought by the National Portrait Gallery for £300,000 to ensure members of the public can see it. It's kept in a special freezer at -16°C. In 2 years' time, Marc Quinn will make another one and will soon have to start storing his blood. He says using blood as opposed to traditional materials keeps the work alive.
I felt that sculptures made of bronze or marble or paintings of paint were just somehow didn't quite get the reality into it, so I wanted to make something even more real.
There's actually more blood in the sculpture than there is in the human body, but the new owners of the exhibit say it's far from being gory.
I think the sound of it, the idea of it is potentially quite gory, but I think when you actually see the work, the beauty of it, I mean the colour of the blood is a wonderful colour, overrides that impression, and we haven't had anyone yet who's had a negative reaction in that respect.
Bloodhead joins more traditional portraits on display in the London Gallery. The artist says he'll continue making one every 5 years until he's no longer physically able to.
It's all stuck down safe and sound. Look back at my picture. The baby hasn't got any scraped paint on it, but that doesn't matter. I'm not copying. I'm doing an interpretation of all three of these images really, and I'm doing it in my own way. This is you putting your own twist on the artist's inspiration. They're just there to start you off. So I think I'm going to use turquoise, because if I used sort of yellow over this strong picture, it's not going to blank out anything. So I'm going to use some turquoise down the middle and possibly the yellow down the side. So just going to put a blob, let me see where, I don't know, I think I might go from here. Put a blob of paint on there, and then I'm going to scrape it. So I've got a bit of my old cardboard box out of my recycle bin, and I'm just going to pull that down. There we go. And I'm leaving a bit of the mask showing, but some of the mask isn't showing anymore, so it's all implied. It's just sort of grinning through the paint a little bit. I'm going to leave that to dry, then I'll probably put some, I think possibly some yellow down the side, a bit of pink, I'm not sure. Don't know, that's just too emphasising girliness, maybe. I don't know. And no, I think I prefer the yellow. The yellow will pick up on some of her skin colour and just give it that edge. And if I cross it over with the blue a little bit, might give me a greeny tinge, which, if you have a look, I've got that in here. Just there, look. So that's the next stage. We need this to dry though. So back in a minute. Now into the final bits. I think this has worked quite well. I'll just sweep those off a minute. You can see that the surface is dried. You can see the little mask peeping through. We've still got a nice clear eye. I don't mind the drips and things. They're quite effective. But the artist's original piece, look, had lots of little add-ons. I think they're splashes of paint mostly. They will take ages to dry and I haven't really got that much paint, so I'm being a bit mean with it. But I think if I use these little bits of foil paper that I found, because I keep lots of rubbish at home, sweetie wrappers from Christmas 100 years ago, I think I can get sort of like the same effect, crowd them, stick them on. Ideally I would use PVA glue. I haven't got much of that at the moment. Oh, that doesn't tear. This is a nice one. Don't like to waste it really. Okay. Oh, I've kept it for probably for 10 years. So I suppose I could spare it now. Okay. There we go. Don't be too regular with it. They sort of need to cluster and come down almost like they're coming down in the rain. Another idea I'm just going to try very quickly is to put on a few dots with a little bit of printing first. So I'll just test it before I do it. So I've covered a loo roll, because we've all got lots of those being locked down, with a little bit of bubble wrap. So I'm just going to have a go at that and see if that makes some nice dots. So I'll just get some paint out. Hang on a sec. Right, found a good brush. I'm flattening out my paint. Again, I'm using acrylic. Some really good paint. It's just all sorts of things, like a little bit of bubble wrap printing. Just using a flattish brush, flattest one I could find. I'm just rubbing it down the bubble wrap. It's got a big piece of masking tape that side, so that's no good. So just have a little go and just see if it... Oh, that's not bad. Okay, so that works. Keep that. That can go on your sheet as an experiment. I don't know if this colour's strong enough to go over the blue, so I'll just do a little bit down the yellow edge first. Just go right up to the masking tape. So here we go. Start at the masking tape and then just roll. I don't want it to be that solid, so just take it off a bit and roll a bit more. Yeah, that'll do nicely. A few more down that side, so it's not an afterthought. Yeah, that works. Oh, well done me. Right, and then finally, when that's dry, I will arrange my little bits of paper. Oops. And just stick them on good old Post-it. Like I said, PVA glue would be better, but just have to manage what you got. Okay. I think I want the bigger piece at the bottom. I like the turquoise on the turquoise. Rub it in so it sticks really well. Just keep going until you feel you've got enough. I'll show you the finished version later. Quick glance at the finished research page on Edward Hopper, just showing that I've put a little bit of information about the artist, some examples of his work. I've done my own recreation, and then I've taken pictures of my recreation and done an interpretation, and sort of explanation really, interpretation of Hopper and how I've developed my ideas. So that's sort of might be worth a read through if you get a chance. A little bit more information about the artist and some quotes by the artist himself. So you can see from this page, doesn't matter if you handwrite, it doesn't matter if you type. Some people like to do nice fancy headers or titles with the artist's name, absolutely fine. Don't spend too much time though on being decorative. Make sure you're meeting all the criteria that I mentioned earlier. I'll just show the other page now on Marc Quinn. Similar thing again on Marc Quinn. He's a British artist. He's around now, so he's what we call a contemporary artist. He's a little bit more unusual in so much as this head is made of his own blood and it's his own self-portrait. Very sort of strange piece of work, but you need to read about it to understand about it. Quite like the final effect of it, and if I was to do some more work on him, I'd probably make a mask, not of my own blood, funnily enough, but he's got that lovely flower painting, which is something else you could do. Here's my experiments of myself through a piece of bubble wrap stuck to a window, taken with some filters. You can read about those. Again, I've done an interpretation of Quinn and how I've developed my ideas based on his work. And then here's the final piece. Turn the camera around if I can. There we've got Buffy the Vampire Slayer in lockdown, in the style of Marc Quinn. Just to finish with. Enjoy yourself, have fun with it, and